This lesson is on the rectangular coordinate system. This is section 3.1 in your textbook. The essential question for this lesson is, how do you interpret and graph a linear equation in two variables? When graphing a linear equation, we use something referred to as the rectangular or Cartesian coordinate system. Now, the rectangular coordinate system looks something like this. Okay, the horizontal axis is the x-axis, and the vertical axis is the y-axis. So we can plot infinite number of points or ordered pairs on this type of a graph. Now, when we have an ordered pair, we write it between two parentheses with the x value first and then the y value second. So if I have an ordered pair, say 4, 6, I would look on my graph, I would go over 4 on the x-axis, then I would go up 6 on the y-axis, and my point would be right there, and that would be the point 4, 6. Now, say we have a linear equation in two variables. Say something like 2x plus 3y equals 6. Okay, so I get 2x plus 3y equals 6. And I want to determine whether the ordered pair 6, minus 2 is a solution for this equation. Well, in order to check that, I would plug in 6 for x minus 2 for y. So that would give me 2 times 6, which is 12, plus 3 times y, which in this case is minus 2, and that's minus 6, obviously. So 12 minus 6 is simply equal to 6. And if you look what was on the right side of my equation, I've got 6. So 6 equals 6, which is true. So therefore, 6 minus 2 is a solution of this equation. Now, the graph of any first-degree equation in two variables is a straight line. What do I mean by that? I mean that any equation that's in this form, ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are numbers, is going to graph as a straight line. This form of the equation is referred to as the standard form. So ax plus by equals c is referred to as the standard. Now let's say we want to find the intercepts. Well, what do we mean by intercepts? The intercepts are where the particular graph crosses the x and y axis. So obviously the x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So the x-intercept, as I said, is simply found by letting y equal to 0 and solving for x in your equation. And that'll give you the x-intercept, or where the equation crosses the x-axis. Now similarly, the y-intercept is where the equation crosses the y-axis, or where x is equal to 0. So the x-intercept is where y is equal to 0. The y-intercept is where x is equal to 0. So now let's look at an example. So let's assume we have an equation 4x minus y equals minus 3, and I'm trying to find the x and y intercept for this equation. Now obviously, once I find the x and y intercept, it's a pretty trivial case to take and graph this equation since we know it's a line, and all we have to do is connect the 2 points that we come up with for the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Okay, so initially let's look for the y-intercept. That's going to be where x is equal to 0. So if we plug in 0 for x, so now what do I have? If I plug in 0 for x, I've got 4 times 0 minus y equals minus 3. Or if I continue to solve that, I get y equals 3. So y equals 3 is the y-intercept. So now let's attempt to find the x-intercept. So that's going to be where y is equal to 0. So letting y equal to 0, I have 4x minus 0 equals minus 3, or simply x is equal to minus 3/4. So x equals minus 3/4 is the y-intercept. So it's down from the origin 3/4, and y equals positive 3 is the y-intercept. Okay? So the x-intercept is minus 3/4, and the y-intercept is y equals 3. So now, how would I graph an equation y equals 4? Notice there's no x in this equation. There's only y equals 4. So what does that tell us about x? Well, there's basically no restrictions on x because it's not even in the equation. So therefore x could be any value, but regardless of what value we pick, y is always going to be equal to 4. So if I were to graph this, you would see in a second that, let's see, y equals 3, so that's up 3 units, and the result is simply a horizontal line. Okay? So if you've got an equation of the form y equals just a number, then you know it's going to be a horizontal line. Now on the other hand, if I had an equation such as x equal 2, notice that there are no y values, there's no y in this equation, only x. So if I go to the point where x is equal to 2, and there's no y restrictions, therefore this is a vertical line going through the point x equals 2. So now let's say we've got 2 points, and we want to find the point that's midway between these 2 points. Well, if we wanted to do that, we could basically end up using the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula says that the x-coordinate of the midpoint is simply equal to x1 plus x2 over 2. And the y-coordinate of the midpoint would simply be y1 plus y2 also over 2. Okay? So if we have 2 points, we can find the coordinates of the midpoint by simply saying x1 plus x2 over 2 and y1 plus y2 over 2. Now what I'd like you to do is find the coordinates of the midpoint of the line segment PQ with endpoints P minus 5, 8 and Q 2, 4 and post your answer in the drop box.